So without further delay, I am pleased to introduce our final panel, which is going to address how organizations are using technology and individuals are using technology to make communities and the world a better place, inspiring in digital citizenship. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kim Karr, Executive Director and Co-founder of Digital for Good. Kim, passing the mic to you.
Thanks, Marcy. So excited to be here. Yes, our nonprofit, I Can Help, which is now actually called Digital for Good, because it was resonating. What do you guys do? We help by making digital for good. So we educate and empower students to use digital for good with our internship program and mentoring, with our educating the curriculum, courses, and trainings, and then also with our events. So I'm super excited that we have on our panel one of our Digital for Good winners this year, and that is Donovan Beck. Let me tell you, this guy, I've known him since he's been in middle school. He is doing things. You guys are going to learn so much, because this panel is 100% how can we make this community and our world better online. So Donovan, come on, show them everything, and don't leave anything out, because I'll brag for you. So tell them exactly what you do that makes you so awesome, and be one of our Digital for Good winners.
Thank you so much. Yeah, hello. My name is Donovan. I am a filmmaker, artist, and creative. I always say that I'm a storyteller in the digital space. I use the world of poetry and artistic medium of film to share stories online about how do we change the world. And my focus is changing the world for artists and changing the world for people who are both struggling and going through their own process of mental health. So I partner as a creative consultant with Meta and Instagram, as well as with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention on their creative arts team. And so a lot of my role is looking into how do we disrupt and create new spaces online, not only for artists, but also for all young people and young students to share their own stories in a better and more tangible way. And so for me, I love this idea. I love working alongside Digital for Good as well as digital citizenship, because I use this space every day, not only for my own art, but also for helping young people share theirs.
So if you are on this call still, you are so cool, because you guys are in the presence of a true influencer. Students, you don't hear them saying, I want to be a professional athlete anymore. They all say, I want to be a professional influencer. So you are right now on a webinar with a true live one. So yes, if you heard, he is getting paid by Meta to be able to do something, which is super powerful. Big thing that he gets paid for is because he is not only a male talking about mental health, but he's a Black male talking about mental health. And that's super, and he's using his spoken poetry to do so. Yeah. So talk to us about how can people use social media to use it as a form of therapy?
Yeah, I think the common conversation is that social media is a sword that's used to sort of destroy people. In regards to, we always talk about social media in the mental health space as being what demises most people, because it's all about comparison, all these sort of things. And I agree with that. I believe that social media is more of a double-edged sword. It also is something that is incredible, and we have toppled whole governments and moved people in movements larger than our own through the use of social media. It's when we use it poorly that it's used poorly, but when we use it well, it can do amazing things. And so for me, the ability to disrupt spaces is kind of my entire focus. The world of poetry has always been a place that's normally reserved for late night coffee shops and the back of jazz clubs and snaps and quiet moments. And when people regard social media, they think of the fast-paced doom scrolling. And my goal is to make pause moments, which is, I loved what Karita had said earlier about pausing, to say when we're going through social media, scrolling, you're met with a video that's made to be calm in a moment of peace in a very crazed world. And for a lot of people, that's their best access to therapy and to places that feel safe for them. I always say that, especially with my mental health advocacy work now, I think it's really cool that we're kind of on the end of the cultural movement of mental health, in which is to say that if you ask any 20-something-year-old or even lower, is mental health important? They say yes. That's basically an immediate answer. Now we're talking about access. Now we're talking about giving tangible resources to people. I've been benefiting to be able to go to therapy for 4.5 years. I'm also in the privileged enough space to be able to spend $145 every single week to go to therapy. Most people don't have that. And so what they can rely on is safe places and safe environments online, which most people have phones or at least somewhat of access to internet. And that is super crucial. And so making those safe places that can be treated as therapy, or at least the beginnings of it, is super important.
And if you guys don't know this, Donovan also was a huge advocate for the 988 number. He did a huge campaign around that for the mental health space, which is so powerful. Donovan, would you mind telling them what your social media handles are? Because if you guys haven't checked it out, you need to. His TikTok is off the hook, amazing, all of it. So tell them what your handles are on that end.
Yeah, at the Mind of Soul, it's TheMindofSol. The Mind of Soul is everything. I luck out because I have a real unique name, so it works out. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think here's the big thing that I want to make sure this group gets, who's, watching you, is everyone's trying to take away those great takeaways, right? And Gen Z is a different generation because you're the first generation who was born in social media, right? And this kind of thing. So what is your best advice? What's your best tip of how for Gen Zers when they're trying to create and make safe and engaging spaces online?
Yeah. In my advocacy world, I say two things. One, students will do the best when they can. When they have the tools, access, and information to do well, they will always do well. I don't think that there's bad students. The second one is meet students where they are. And that's where a lot of our conversations around how do we teach Gen Z, how do we teach digital wellness and all these sort of things to young people, the people who know the best ways to handle the online spaces are young people themselves. Meet them where they are, meet them in their own spaces. If they feel more comfortable sharing parts of their story in the realm of artistic expression through like TikToks or Instagram, meet them there. Don't force them into an essay. And the ability is that gives a young person way more expressibility in their own selves. And I think that's the really unique things about Gen Z is they are such an expressive generation. And when you give them tools and resources and access to be expressive, they will follow suit. And that's how I always like to view young people. Like I said, they do the best when they can. And that's how everyone is. And so giving them the most tools and access to do well is something that's going to do really powerfully. So.
Love it. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I just saw some people put in there about the parents and how they need to have that. And I think the biggest thing that when we speak to students, it's teaching them like there is mental health crisis, but I think most of it's teaching them how to have mental health management, right? Like, having that big piece. And I think Donovan is using social media as a management tool. And he's also then educating people about their, how to manage your mental health. And that is even managing your device. And what works for Donovan might not work for everybody, but it works for him. And I guarantee he's able to get that. So what's your best mental health management tool that you use personally?
I have hundreds of them over there, but they're these. My friends know to gift me notebooks all the time. I use notebooks as a way to. We are really good about trying to keep everything in our brain. All of our to-do lists, our tasks, the things that need to get done, the people we need to talk to, everything. And I treat my notebooks not as to-do lists, but more as just brain dump places. So I put just any of my thoughts, whether they're dream journals or how I'm feeling or things I have to get done, because it's easier for me to see them physically here than it is to see them inside of my brain. And this is where I also start all my writing. All my writing starts from my journals. All my ideas start from there. I think it's really poorly that we have these really amazing ideas for our classes, for our friends, for things we want to do with our loved ones, and we're like, oh, I'm going to remember it. I'm going to remember it. It's going to be fine. And then five minutes later, it's gone. So I have journals with me at all times, or my notes section in my phone. And any thought that I have gets placed into those spaces so that I always know that I have them somewhere with me at all times.
Love it.
Yeah.
Everybody who's watching, please drop it in the chat of how amazing you think Donovan is doing and his work is doing. Let's hype him up because yes, he's making our community and our world better and using technology to do so. So please put that in the chat. While we move over, it's like, how do you follow this amazingness, right? You're like at the age of, what are you, 21? At the age of 21,
22.
22. Okay. Thanks to aging me more. At the age of 22, it's like, man, but we could move over here because I fangirl over teachers all the time. People who were teachers and then they just keep getting cooler and cooler. And Sabrina's work that she's doing, what she's doing, you guys, number one, she's bringing STEM, making it cool by making it with music. So Sabrina, can you tell the group what you are doing with your project?
Yes, thank you so much, Kim and Donovan. It's just so great to hear your story and learn more about you. So my name is Sabrina Grossman, and I I was a former teacher. I actually taught high school biology and middle school science for around 10 years. And then I moved over to the Center for Education, Integrating Science, Math, and Computing at Georgia Tech, and have continued to work on K-12 STEAM outreach and advocate and lead systemic change to increase STEM interest and achievement for all students. And I've had the privilege to work on a program called Your Voice is Power, an ear sketch, and kind of evolved it over the last couple of years. So Your Voice is Power is a competition and curriculum learning experience that explores the question, how can music, computer science, and entrepreneurship be tools to fight for social justice? And students use the EarSketch platform, which is a free web-based program that teaches students to code in Python and JavaScript using music remixing. And
get Black Friday deal.
So students are able to then code on EarSketch and use their voice and code to share a message through music. And what we've had is we've partnered with Amazon Future Engineer and Amazon Music to have some top recording artists such as Pharrell, Alicia Keys, and Khalid donate music and stems from some of their top songs such as Entrepreneur, Underdog, and New Normal for students to use as inspiration in their composition. And we like to focus on the experience where students learn about messaging the music and see coding for social good. But at the same time, it is also a competition. So we love to award students, and they can win up to $5,000 in prizes for their work.
That's so awesome. So what you're telling me is that any of these students, anybody, these teachers, they can get their students to collab with Pharrell and with Alicia Keys by coding. That's what you're telling us.
Yes. And we will play some of their songs later. And what I love is that students could really integrate their own voice with the voices of these top recording artists. And it's amazing how they can layer them and share kind of their own message about social justice or about their community using music from these recording artists.
And I went and stalked some of them there. If you guys have a chance, I'm telling you, and I'm hoping they'll drop one in the link. Cue ISTE staff to drop that in the link. It basically, it really is, it's so powerful because Alicia Keys has that song called Underdog. It's so powerful. It totally is like uplifting and power, like, and to drop whatever they're passionate about, like now you get them pulling their strings even more. So I love how you guys are using this to use coding to collaborate and community driven. Can you kind of just dive in like deeper, like what has been your experience when they've been doing this?
So yes, I think one of the biggest things that's really come out of Your Voice is Power is that coding can be collaborative and you can be part of a community and you can kind of code for this idea of social good. EarSketch in itself is a collaborative program. Multiple students can work on the same song. And I always like to talk to students that writing their code is just like if they were in a band and working together to actually compose a song. They have the opportunity to share their music and get peer feedback and build confidence. And I like to use some of like our teachers' words because I think that is most powerful. And so through actually doing this competition, some students who would otherwise never talk to each other were all of a sudden praising each other's work. They gained confidence to play their remixes for their class and get peer feedback. They allowed their students opportunities to kind of share and listen to each other to create a positive and fun learning environment. Our students have consistently said like they feel that being able to express themselves through music has really freed themselves because often it's engaging all of the senses. And if I think about like why music is often used for social change, it engages your senses. And so students really feel freed and empowered. And that's kind of like this interesting kind of intersection of something that's coding that might be structured to music that's also freeing and empowering to kind of create this community.
Yeah. And the title genius, by the way, on your title, your voice is power, right? Like that, and that resonates so much with this Gen Z because they are the generation who is about their voice and their power. And so I just love for you just even kind of like talk about how can students use that code to share their own voice? Like what are you seeing them doing on that end too?
Yes, and actually, maybe this would be the best time to kind of play one of their songs so you can hear it directly from them.
Yes, drop it.
And actually, this is one of our 2022 grand prize winners. He is from Guam, and this is his second time entering. And he's expressed that he was so proud of winning for, sorry, speak over it, because to inspire other students. So I'm gonna just let it play.
At the bus stop, mothers waiting on a check to come. Young teachers, student doctors, sons on the front line, knowing they don't get to run. This goes out to the underdog. Keep on keeping that what you love. That's all they soon need of. Rise up, yeah. Let go, 'cause you never know what's in store, Mr. Entrepreneur. You gotta let go. If you wanna fly, take the lead. You gotta risk it all. There could be lots of things on the you gotta let go. If you
That's so awesome. I love it. That, I mean, like I said, it just was so impressive to see. So that was the second time he entered, and then he won this past year or this year.
Yes. So he was a semifinalist his first year, and then went back and actually worked on his code. He wasn't even in a computer science classroom, but did it on his own, and entered again, and just inspiring. And those two artists that you heard was Alicia Keys to start, being remixed with Pharrell.
And what are the ages that you're seeing that are using this?
So it's open for any students, K through 12, mostly middle and high school students seem to grasp it the most, but we've had some fantastic elementary students also enter.
Love it. Love it. And then please make sure you put in the chat for them on how they can get a hold of you if they want to kind of check out any of your work. Can we please drop it in the chat of how impressive you think Sabrina's doing with Your Voice is Power? Like, amazing title. Thank you so much for all your work that you're doing to make our community and our world better. Seriously, that is what a great way to get students right there, is by music and getting their voices being heard. Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Yeah. And how to tie it all together. You go from student, you go to music. How do you tie it, and how do you crush this and do a mic drop at the end? We had to bring Lucy in to do the global, like, man, we've got to get out there in the global world. So Lucy, please explain what you're doing to kind of bring all those pieces together for us.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kim, and hi everyone, and greetings from London here in the UK. Yeah, I'm just so impressed by what Donovan and Sabrina are doing. I work for a programme that's called Generation Global, and it's part of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And what we do is we equip young people aged 13 to 17 with skills, knowledge and attitudes to become active and open-minded global citizens. And we've got a couple of pathways for young people themselves, but also for educators. And the first is an online self-directed gamified pathway called the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure. And it's for young people to learn skills of dialogue. So things like critical thinking, active listening, global communication, questioning and reflection. And they can learn them online in a safe and trusted space called the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure. And as part of that whole experience, they also get to be able to learn and build their knowledge about contemporary topics and the things that matter to them most. So it's been designed with young people themselves. So things like digital wellness, the rights of girls and women. We have about 12 different topics, global citizenship, and also climate change. And then we have another pathway, which is, you'll see on the screen, which is called the Educator Portal. And this is really for teachers and educators in the non-formal settings. And they can go in and they can download resources and activities that they can use in the classroom. And they can also book online spaces and topics and video conferences as well for their students. And in the video conferences, they're able to connect with global peers. So we have worked with over 570,000 young people globally since we started in 2009. and from over 30 different countries. So we really are global. It includes the US, Mexico, Ukraine, the UK, parts of Africa as well, including Ghana and also India, Indonesia. Our program is very popular there as well. And so that's what we do. And we also run an online educator course for educators so they can learn also about what dialogue skills are.
Love it. This is such an important work. I mean, I feel like we've definitely been learning that even how much more important is the past couple of years is, and people should know the answer, but I think it's always good for them to hear it again and to hear it from the professional. But why is it so important to engage in intercultural dialogue online, right? Like, why is that? Being a teacher, you're so busy teaching so many other things. Why do you think this part is so important for them to get as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a really important point, Kim. You know, during the pandemic, so much of the focus was how can we keep young people learning online? And I think to be able to engage online, I was hearing earlier, so one of the former speakers and panelists was talking about the importance of pause, you know, especially pausing before posting. I saw someone put, and I thought that's a really great way of communicating it. You know, there's so much voice out there, but it's not always very positive, and it's not always in a way that's respectful or engaging or thoughtful. And so what we do is we help young people to develop the skills so that they can be authentic, so that they can be thoughtful and respectful when they engage online, despite some of the noises that they hear that isn't always in that vein. So, you know, given that we're more interconnected than we ever have been, and we've got the largest youth population ever, it's really important that we can help to bridge geographies and create meaningful connections between young people online. So as I've mentioned before, dialogue skills really helps with that. So really actively listening to what people are saying, being respectful by what they hear and what they learn, and critical. And so not taking things for granted and accepting information and challenging it and going and finding out for yourselves whether it is the truth, whether it's fact and reliable information. And global communication is going to be so important. So as young people develop and they move into high school, they go on to university, they work perhaps with global peers, being able to communicate across boundaries is really important, and to reflect on what they hear and they question as well, and asking good questions is really important. So we think that kind of enabling young people to be able to have these really important skills, which, you know, you don't learn by osmosis. It's not things that you can take for granted. They're really important to be able to practice and learn them, and so that you can become more confident and to understand your own identity and those of others, whilst also having that safe and trusted space that in Generation Global we're able to provide. And I should say that all of our resources are free of cost. So if anyone's got children that are 13 to 17, or they're a teacher or educator, you know, just look us up, generation.global, and you'll find all of our resources there, the Ultimate Dialogue event, and also the DigCit.
And Lucy, I'm going to put you on the spot just because I think it'd be fun to hear a real live experience. I mean, like, again, this is such a trending thing. Can you give a story of a student that you saw like using this dialogue to be able to share their own voice? Like, how did you, can you give it a good example of a real life student story to kind of bring it to life to the audience that's watching this webinar right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a student that's part of our volunteer alumni moderator program, which is from Ukraine. And some of you may already be aware of the troubles that they're facing there at the moment. And so when she took part in Generation Global and she reached 18, which is when, you know, typically, you know, the program comes to an end and they successfully conclude, she said, I really want to stay involved in Generation Global because what you've done is you've made me feel like I can change the world for the better. And these are her own words. And Daria said, I have developed some extremely important skills, such as open-mindedness and the possibility of finding common ground with those from different cultures and beliefs. And that's really what we try to do. I was in India just last month, and I had the absolute opportunity and wonder and the privilege to meet young people in rural communities across India, in Lucknow, in Andhra Pradesh, And they said to me, this is the first time I've ever actually met someone from a different background to myself, and the opportunity to speak to them, to practice my English language skills, but also to be able to hear what life is like for them. It just, just changed their world to a certain extent, for them to understand people, that there are similarities between themselves, and sometimes even though they're living very different lives and different cultures, cultural backgrounds. So just an example from our alumni moderator, but we have so many. We have over 20,000 young people that are part of our program, our Ultimate Dialogue Venture, and it really is inspiring. Every day we hear these incredible stories and how they're making a difference in their community as a result of the dialogue skills that they've developed, and how the experience is transforming their lives. It really can be quite powerful.
Not quite. It is powerful. So thank you for everything that you're doing, because it really is like, we have to teach them. I'm from the United States, but my nieces were raised in Stockholm, Sweden. And it's just so fun to be able to hear their conversations. And now my niece is in college in New York, and the culture shock of her going to school in the US that compared to, she went to school in France, in Paris, and in Stockholm. She's like, it's so different. And so, yes, what you're doing matters, and we need to keep, doing those things. And thank you for everything you did. And please shout Lucy out in the comments right now what you got from her, and keep supporting her work and what she's doing with that, because it is 100% amazing. I want to ask the entire panelist a final question, and I'm not going to make it go in the same order, so you guys can decide who wants to go first. But we're in a room full of amazing, powerful humans. Like, these educators have so much power. And again, our topic is like about making communities and the world better by using, digital spaces. So what's your best tip? What's your takeaway? You got powerful people in the room. What do you think they need to be doing to go back? What's your one last kind of comment that you guys want to give them to go back with their students and share with them? Anybody want to go first? Donovan does. Get it, Donovan.
I always say this a lot whenever I work, not only with students, but also with teachers. The rules of digital spaces and the rules of physical spaces are not different. The things that you should do in both spaces are exactly the same. Working to see people exactly how they are, welcoming the ability for people to tell their stories without judgment and open-mindedness, or with open-mindedness, plays the same amount of rules as it does inside of digital spaces. It's just to a larger degree. And more stories can be told, and the barriers that allow people to tell their stories are much lower. But when you guys are making these stories, when you're making these spaces and working with students, treat it exactly the same way that you treat it is inside of your own classroom. Allow them to speak their mind how you would hope them to do so, and allow them to also know how to let other people speak their mind as well. I think we like to teach that these spaces are different and the rules play differently, but in all sincerity, you should go into both spaces, both physical and digital, in the same manner, is how I like to view a lot of this. And so I don't try to treat my poetry or the work that I do any differently as I do online, as with the students that I work with and the people that I work with in person. I like to be the same on both aspects of myself, which is the unfortunate thing that we typically teach people, or a lot of young people like to view their online personality and their in-person personality as two different things. And when we advocate for them to tell their story in both spaces equally, you can have someone be way more empowered in their own voice, which I think is super engaging and powerful. So, yeah.
Great answer. Over to you, Sabrina. You got a good answer to finish up with.
I think just supporting what Donovan said is allowing students to be their authentic selves online, and showing them that the online space is just another pathway for them to share their voice, and make an impact on this world. And so, yeah, I think exactly what Donovan said. And I know our program is just thinking about just a little more in the class is showing students that online and coding and computer science is just another opportunity for them to share their voice and advocate for themselves and their communities.
Love it. Love it. And Lucy?
Yeah, it's a hard act to follow, really, with Donovan and Sabrina. I would say that one of the things that we always talk about in Generation Global is to always speak from the I perspective, and so not to generalize and talk about we and in our country, but really genuinely talk about I believe this, I think this. And I think it comes back to also what Sabrina was saying about being authentic. And I think when you start to do that, you start to understand yourself and understand that you own what you say and take responsibility for it, and therefore it does lead to you pausing before you put anything out there when you say I as opposed to we. And so I think, you know, use the I and take it from the I perspective, and you can't go wrong. And all those other elements of respect and authenticity, I think, will come together when you start to do that.
Love it. Thank you so much, panelists. You guys did so amazing. I love seeing the chats and the things. And we're going to keep the chat going because I'm going to be turned over to Marcy. She's in charge of ISTE. And if you have loved this day, it is like they planned this giant wedding and now the day is over. So we need to make sure we put our hands together, tell them thank you, because this is not an easy event to put together. So let's give it up for ISTE and their entire staff. And over to you, Marcy. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank
What an
you so much.
incredible, thank you all so much. What an incredible panel. I loved hearing all of the work you all are doing.